Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Um, I have definitely been away for about maybe it's what 2 weeks now, possibly. But there was an unfortunate passing away in my family, so I decided to just take some time off. However, today I am returning with another presentation to speak to Black women about sanctuary power and this displacement of people, which is pretty much Americans. How immigration, crime, and policy um, bites Black America. Now, again, this is not for everybody. Some people may see this and immediately start being emotional about it, but I wanted to focus on this so that any American other than Black women can understand what has been going on using data to kind of paint a picture. Okay. Again, I'm not saying I'm a Democrat or a Republican. I just did some research and, wanted to just present this in a way so that we as Black women can make better informed decisions when it comes to politics, voting, policies in relation to ourselves. And I feel our community, if we are doing better, America would do better as well. And though I don't agree with a lot of stuff or with some things I'll say that are happening with our current administration, and to me, it's more the articulation of stuff. It's also how the handling of things are happening. More private businesses are able to roll out shit way more better than what we seen the government does. And I'm not just saying it's a Republican thing; it's also Democrats as well. But this presentation is to just focus on sanctuary cities and states and how they have affected Black America. And we'll go over, deeper into what this is, the things that I can point out. There are other Black Americans in other states, for example, Chicago, who are speaking out about the mismanagement of the government when it comes to Americans and specifically, Black American communities. Now, does this affect other communities that are American? Yes, it does. But I feel if we focus on Black American communities, those other communities, like our white American counterparts, can understand that them not backing up, them not fighting for Americans. Again, if we can remove MAGA, the idea of MAGA, we can remove those who are supremacist minded, meaning, you believe white this and white that. It's devastating to know that you think like that. But we also have to understand that a lot of things happen because, unfortunately, our counterparts in white America had too much emotional issues going on when it pertained to race, that their policies, the way they think, is some of the reasons why the Democrats are able to funnel in people from all over the world and continue to promote policies or promote or manipulate people emotionally, right? So I do understand there's white people, Asians and stuff who don't think in that way, supremacist way. But I need Americans to understand that when Black people are affected, and you don't speak up, in a way to articulate yourself, this will continue to affect Black Americans. And I'm presenting this, mostly to Black women because I am a Black woman, right? But I want to be able to speak to the mindset of my community so we can be informed and a little bit and more politically literate in the way we approach American politics, because we are Americans at the end of the day. And we can't just be allowing ourselves to be manipulated and not understand that we're not getting any wins just voting for whoever, right? So we begin with an admission. For too long, policies have been written about Black people rather than with them. And sanctuary policies are a perfect example. The story of sanctuary is often framed as a moral choice about welcoming immigrants. But behind that veneer lies a quiet, powerful reallocation of resources, influence, and political will. This presentation will expose the mechanics of sanctuary, how it was built, how it funds itself, and how it changes who gets counted, who gets served, and who gets left behind. If you ever felt your city changing in ways that you didn't vote for, this is your map to understanding how and why. If your neighborhood once felt protected but now feels neglected, you'll see the levers of power that were turned without your input. By walking through the legal structures, financial flows, and human consequences, I intend to show you how sanctuary policies intersect with race, gender, and economics, and how we can respond with clarity and not noise. Now, some of you may not know what sanctuaries are, what they mean, you know. And I'm going to break that down for us a little bit, okay? Now, when you hear sanctuary city or sanctuary state, like California, for example, many assume it means a city harboring undocumented immigrants or refusing law enforcement cooperation wholesale. That oversimplification misses the nuance. A sanctuary jurisdiction typically limits local cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. And we're seeing that in the news, on social media, or your boots on the ground, and you're seeing it. It's pretty much where these cities or states say, hey, we are not going to cooperate as much as we should when it comes to immigration. Now, does that mean they'll cooperate with criminals? Possibly, but in a general consensus, it's saying we're going to limit local cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. So, for example, refusing to detain people on ICE holds without judicial, warrants, or instructing agencies not to inquire about immigration status and certain interactions. The legal backbone is the doctrine of anti commandeering, meaning federal law cannot force states or municipalities to execute federal enforcement. Now, if you don't understand how government works, states have their own laws and rules, and then there's federal. And if you don't understand that, you need to understand how that works. This is why, myself personally, I don't jump to conclusions about everything because I understood how government worked. I think in a government class in like maybe junior high or something. So, and that was just the start, right? But I understand how government works because I try to inform myself, and I've been informing myself for years. And this is why I have not continued to vote Democrat just to vote Democrat, right? Because it makes no sense. Now, however, sanctuary is not a monolith, it's a patchwork. Some jurisdictions bar all cooperation. Okay, so there are some cities that are sanctuary, and this is to focus specifically on sanctuary cities and states. They will not cooperate at all, right? So in Chicago, supposedly the mayor um, told the local law enforcement to stand down to help out the National Guard that was coming into town to help um, not only help ICE, remove people that were illegal immigrants. I don't try to play the semantics game that some of the media is playing. Illegal immigrant is an illegal immigrant. There's no way around that, right? So, so others carve expectations for violent crimes. Some allow municipal IDs or curb local eviction of immigrants. The real effect is in the details. In practice, sanctuary policies shift how policing, adjudication, housing, and social services operate. So, again, these are very important factors when it comes to your local government. And that's why I do say it's not just about the president and who you're voting in as a president every 4 years. Black women, you have to be smart about your local government, and that's your judges, your city controller, who's becoming the next police chief or sheriffs. And when I mean city controller, we're talking about tax related or financial related, because money matters. You get money from the federal government when you're paying taxes because you're working. All that stuff matter when you're seeing schools being updated or new buildings or streets, lights, all that matters. So black women who are living in sanctuary cities or states, you need to understand why some of the things in your community has not been taken care of. And we're even talking about crime, okay? Because we know not all of us are down or support criminals. I myself do not support criminals at all. Okay. So this is why some of your communities continue to be degraded because of the policy shifts and because of it being a sanctuary city. Now, are we saying sanctuary cities are the only reason crime is crazy or blah, blah, blah? Or, again, you have people saying, oh, it's blue states only. And that's just not true. America experiences crime in general. It doesn't matter your state, city, where the hell you're from. People can promote and push that we don't do crime over here, but that's just not the truth. If certain crime was not even rampant, you'll still have crime going on at every freaking level from every community here, right? So I'm not here to spread misinformation about crime, but I want to show why Black women crime is affecting you more than anyone else when you're trying to progress as an American. And those other communities not supporting you, is the reason why, some of them are disgruntled or feeling a certain way. But, you immediately grasping onto a certain idea about people is another detriment to your community. Okay. Some people have been ringing the alarm and they're not even Black. They've been ringing the alarm. So it's how you have to take in information, right? So they reorient the city's priorities. And those priorities, when unchecked, can favor new immigrants at the expense of longtime Black communities. Okay? Now, we just figured out what sanctuaries mean. Okay? Now, let's look at how sanctuaries are created. Now, the origin story matters. Some sanctuaries sprang from a mayor's pen, excuse me. Others from council votes or state statutes. So if you got trolls online, some of them could be MAGA, some are Republicans, some are just racist people, who are also being manipulated. They don't realize they've been manipulated as well. But some of them like to say, well, you guys voted for it, you voted for this. But if you don't understand the details, again, being more politically literate, even in how you vote, how you respond, showing up to city council meetings, showing up to all that stuff, being involved in your community, saying, hey, we got zero tolerance on crime. If you're continuing to do those things and getting support on that, you can easily debate that no, we all don't even vote on some of this stuff. Some of these things are just automatically being implemented and they have never checked with people in those communities, right? Now, let's look at Chicago declaring itself a welcoming city in 1985 through executive initiative. Okay, so when we're talking about executive orders from the president to a mayor to a governor, again, these are actions taken without voting happening from the citizens of that city or that state. San Francisco followed with council resolutions in the 1980s. So some of these sanctuary cities and states have been here since the 80s, okay? Later codified into municipal law. So they started out as resolutions or executive orders, and then they became laws later on. In California, the state legislature passed SB 54 in 2017, the California Values Act, okay, making sanctuary principles statewide. So California is the only state that I'm aware of, based on my research, that is a sanctuary state. However, again, when it comes to federal, state, city, or township, those laws can change. For example, I believe Huntington Beach um, is an area. It's more of a Republican area, but it's pretty cool. I don't have too many problems with people in that area. You got some people that are racist or do some weird racist stuff. Um, to me, these are people that just need to go to somebody's hospital because you can't say there's no racism and then you just automatically believe something about people. So that means people believing that you're automatically racist or you automatically are a pedophile or you automatically do something. You can't get mad, right? You have to stop that thinking just as well as other people. But, Huntington Beach is saying, yo, we do not want to be a sanctuary city. So, regardless of what the state of California says, do not send any undocumented immigrants to our city because we're not going to have the funds for them. We're not having no housing for them. We're not going to supply anything for anyone who's not American citizens. Not only that, we may only get certain type of funding from the federal government or the state government, meaning this money has been allocated. And when we're talking about budgets and things like that, this money has been allocated for certain programs or maybe infrastructure or whatever, maybe beach cleanup days or whatever, you know what I'm saying, for that city of Huntington Beach, right? So, excuse me, in Oregon, the original 1987 law, ORS 181A excuse me, 820, prohibited the use of state or local resources for immigration enforcement years before the modern sanctuary debate took off. Okay, so Oregon put into law that they do not want any of the state or local resources for any immigrant enforcement. Okay. So these are little things that are put into these laws or these resolutions or executive orders that, again, some of the citizens just may not be aware of, especially if you're politically illiterate, right? Each method carries consequences. Executive orders can be revoked. Okay. Council ordinances can be repealed. Statutes need legislative push to change. In some cases, sanctuary protections are embedded in charters or state laws, making them harder to overturn. So that means that state or that city has, really put that into the law where they want to make it harder for Americans, whether you are in a government position or, a political candidate or law or whatever, they want to make it harder for you to overturn something that is not even meant for Americans, right? A new administration seeking change must navigate legal constraints, political resistance, and public scrutiny. Understanding how sanctuary was installed is how you learn how it can be uninstalled or reformed. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. This may be a nice, deep presentation just because I want to make sure you understand the information when it comes to sanctuary cities. Okay, so we've talked about thus far what sanctuary means, how these are created as well, right? So we know executive orders, legislation, all of that is pretty much a part of why you are in a city that you never possibly voted for any of this to go down, okay? And again, it's specifically tying around immigration. I have nothing against legal immigrants. Um, my issue, like all other Americans, we do not want undocumented or illegal immigrants, and we do not want the media or our political candidates or people we voted to put in these positions to continue to supply funding, pivoting, or any of that towards them more than the American people. And again, Black women, I'm presenting this so that you can understand when you're voting off emotions, when you're voting because you think one side is super duper racist or whatever. What I don't see is a lot of black women in the Republican side, for example, helping to straighten it out. You can't be over there and just be more docile over there than you are with the Democrats. To me, it doesn't make sense to do that. It's fake to me, but it is what it is, right? So let's just talk about the timeline um, of these sanctuary cities and or states. Now, from California to New York, from Oregon to Illinois, sanctuary laws now dot the national landscape. Many cities adopted sanctuary policies in mid 2010s, following the Trump era deportation intensification. States like California in 2017, Washington in 2019, and Colorado in 2019 codified sanctuary like protections. Chicago's welcoming policy dates to 1985. San Francisco's first sanctuary declarations go back to the 1980s. New York's 2017 executive orders reinforce city-state alignment. Now, what you'll notice, sanctuary adoption clustered after 2014, okay, especially after high-profile immigration crackdowns. Some cities moved early as symbolic statements. Some states enacted law when local jurisdictions pushed back for federal enforcement. The timeline reveals momentum and political waves and shows how sanctuary isn't a fleeting trend, but a structural shift in municipal sovereignty. Okay. Now, when we talk about 2014, and it could have been a little bit earlier than that, but I do recall, I know Arizona, usually the southern border states, they were always loud about undocumented or illegal border crossings, right? Almost every country that I am aware of who have laws about immigration policies, and that even means for Americans like us going to other countries, right? We got to have a passport or a visa if we're going to work there, or if you are going to start a business there. There's certain laws and rules are in place as well. For some reason, again, when you're looking at the media and how people are either omitting stuff or not plainly just laying it out so people can understand, you would believe that America just don't give a shit. Again, the governments have been lenient on immigration, right? Very, very lenient. But when there's new people voted in, that can and will change at times, right? And again, we're just focusing on sanctuary cities and immigration issues, but in general, for any new laws, whether it's crime or education or whatever, things can change. So that's why Black women is important to be politically literate and understand how you're voting, who you're voting for. You know what I'm saying? If there's Republican or conservative views that align with you, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm going to vote for this person because they align with the things I need. If you voted Democrat, same thing. Hey, this person aligns with the things I need. But I think what happened with us as Black women, um, we tended, and this is changing with millennial women and women who are a little bit older than us, but it's changing, and Gen Z, excuse me, how we think about things, how we engage differently, right? We don't want to just let old tropes and just belief systems of our own community to affect how we think for ourselves. I love to think for myself. I really don't like to go with the status quo. I don't like to go with what people believe in their mind about me and how I should act and all this other stuff. Even when I come across people who are just intentionally prejudiced or racist, like it's their fault for believing that. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Like it's your fault for being tricked. Like it has absolutely nothing to do with me, right? Because I'm nothing you believe that I am. I'm everything that, you know, uh, that I can be. I'm everything that you're not, even, right? So we can understand that the symbolism, and because of that era, I believe I want to say 2014, but I think it was earlier. I forgot that sheriff name that was in Arizona, but he's the one I remember And again, I was still kind of young. A lot of us millennials, we were still kind of young in a way, and we weren't really politically motivated as much, or understood a lot of stuff that was happening, right? So, but now that we're getting older, some of us are in our 40s, some of us are still in our mid 30s, late 30s. So, this is a perfect time for us to get corrected on a lot of things because our generation is going to be establishing more and more laws and changes throughout the years to come. Okay, so this is why it's time, especially as Black women, to start gaining political power again. And this time, really making a statement and being smart about it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here and talk about legal and structural limits. Now, sanctuary jurisdictions occupy a contested legal middle ground. They don't and can't block ICE from operating. Rather, they refuse to participate in federal enforcement beyond legal constraints. A detainer, ICE's request to hold someone beyond their scheduled release, is non binding unless accompanied by a warrant. Courts have found that holding individuals beyond release without proper authority may violate the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizures. Okay. So when some people are saying, hey, because they're undocumented, they may not get the benefit of our Constitution, but that's not entirely true, right? It just depends on the circumstances. But and again, detaining is different from being arrested and serving time, or getting your due process is different from someone who's already got due process and they ended up just hiding in the country, but they were told to leave and they ended up hiding enough. And if they're in sanctuary cities or states, they are good to hide for 20, 30 years because that sanctuary city or state is not enforcing anything. So it's kind of, when you think about it, when they are going along with that, they're signaling to people who are not even from your country that they can come here, break the law by not even going through the legal ports, then applying for immigration status, right? And we're not talking about asylum because unfortunately the last administration made it about asylum when I personally think Haiti was the only real country that deserve asylum, in my opinion. But when you're promoting that and you're not stopping that, then you got a whole influx of people just coming on in, right? And they're just immediately taking advantage of the laws here. Now, states may enact preemption laws to force localities to cooperate with ICE or curtail sanctuary powers. Some judges, under pressure, have issued rulings or injunctions undermining sanctuary policies. So, again, this is why it's important, Black women, to vote in a manner, especially locally, that it will benefit you. And I'm going to continue to try to work on platforms and things to present better about people who are running or who are in certain city council positions, because I think it's important that we know their names, know what they stand for, right? Because we're having people, because our government allows people to be immigrants here and become legalized and get into these positions, and then they end up opening doors for a bunch of illegal activity, right? And we can't have that as Americans. We cannot have it. We simply cannot. So, and then when you have judges who kind of makes these rulings, um, you know, that goes against policy, that's a whole other battle, right? So this is why it's also, you can vote for judges. You literally can. Okay. Other than them being appointed, you do kind of see judges on some of the voting registrations when you are voting. You'll see that as well. So funding is another lever. Federal threats to withhold grants have forced compliance in some jurisdictions. Okay. So this is where you see a Trump saying, hey, I either know or I believe that you're not assisting because of your sanctuary laws or whatever. You're not assisting us to remove people who are illegal, undocumented, or already been ordered to leave this country. You're not assisting us. So, because the federal government supplies funding for infrastructure or maybe SBA grants, whatever the federal government is giving that city or state funding for via grants, they then could say, we're going to withhold it because you're not in compliance, you're not helping us out. So why should we continue to give you money? And we believe it's not going to the American citizen. So that could be possibly what is happening when we talk about a Trump administration and them saying, hey, we're going to possibly withhold funds from these particular cities and states because they do not want to help us out to enforce the federal law when it comes to immigrants, right? Now, cities also defend sanctuary via lawsuits. Okay, so you see lawsuits are happening from these sanctuary city areas or states, right? Claiming it is a constitutional right to refuse federal duties. In sanctuary jurisdictions, policy lives in tension between federal supremacy and local autonomy. So you got to also see that black women as, yo, our city or our state that is a sanctuary city or state is refusing to help out, and the government is not going to send these funds, meaning it's going to affect us as Americans if you do that. If you do that. So you got to see why, if the federal government says we're going to pull funds or grants, that is going to affect you as an American. So why would you want to be in an alignment with a city or a state who does not put you first, knowing those funds are to help support you and the infrastructures around you, right? Now, let's talk about crime because crime, again, affects Black women a lot in these sanctuary cities and states. And we're not just saying that immigrants are the only reasons for crime, right? Because it's not true. So let's cut to the data. Multiple empirical studies find no consistent surge in crime after sanctuary adoption. So right now they're saying there's no surge in crime, right? However, um, we kind of see different. We know different, but they're saying it's not. So we're just going to go with what the data says. I'm not going to try to force anything here, right? In fact, in many counties that adopted sanctuary or limited cooperation, property crime declined and violent crime remained stable or fell relative to matched non sanctuary counties. And this is from a social science research in 2022. One analysis from American Progress showed sanctuary counties had 35 fewer crimes per 10,000 people than comparable non sanctuary ones. Now, when we talk about 2022, what was going on? The pandemic. Okay, so people were in the house. So you got to understand what was also going on at that time to know why things stopped. Now, crime fell a little bit, I think, in a lot of cities and states because everybody was in the house. They couldn't work, they couldn't be outside, right? So a lot of people were pretty much inside. But beware averages. These data can obscure spatial concentration. Within the same city, certain precincts, often the poorest, least resourced, may see crime increase or policing withdraw. So again, policing withdrawing, whether these police are racist or not, that should be, something to look into. Was it them making these decisions or was it coming from the top down? Because sometimes you got to look from the top down. A good manager, a good leader, um, everyone who's under them usually will follow, right? So you got to look at those things too. That's why it's important when you're voting in sheriffs or superintendents even, or any of that, it really matters. Judges, that all matters, right? Sanctuary policies can reassign law enforcement priorities, creating hot zones of neglect. Hot zones of neglect. because your city, your sanctuary city or state says, hey, we're not going to focus on immigrants or anything like that. And we're just going to let crime pop off in certain areas and not really address it as much, right? So while cities might tout lower citywide homicide rates, the narrative may mask that Black neighborhoods, especially those under resourced, are absorbing the burden. Always ask Black women who is being protected and who is exposed when stuff like this happens. These are the questions that you really got to pose to yourself and not let emotion blindly lead you to making decisions that will affect you being an American here. Okay? Let's look at the economic ripple effects now. Sanctuary counties tend to show modest advantages in median income, unemployment, and poverty rates. For instance, one NILC analysis suggests median household incomes are about $4,300 higher in sanctuary jurisdictions, and poverty rates 2.3% lower compared to non-detainer counterparts. Labor force participation also trends 2 to 3% higher. These are real statistical differentials. But as with crime, averages blur disparity. Those economic gains often occur in neighborhoods that already have capital infrastructure or political voice. For historic Black districts, the gains are muted or even negative because the money doesn't flow equitably. When city agencies chase immigrant integration grants, expansions, and services, they often bypass older Black neighborhoods that lack grant writing capacity or political representation. In effect, sanctuary policies may pump city level GDP while draining local resilience in Black communities. And so you see that this affects you on every level with employment and labor, economics, crime, okay, grants for your businesses. This all affects you. They could even use you to get this funding, but continue to allow these hot zones to exist in your communities, in your historic communities. Okay, now let's get to the next one. Now, let's talk about the redirection of funding. So, look at sanctuary budgets and you'll find patterns. Spending lines for immigrant legal defense, interpretation services, safe haven shelters, municipal ID systems, and language access offices. These initiatives matter, but they cost Black women. They cost. Cities finance them by diverting staff, reassigning offices, or cutting corners elsewhere. Okay? When immigrant oriented programs expand, other departments feel leaner. Youth services, senior care, Black health initiatives. In heavily sanctuary cities, agencies rebrand immigrant services as community integration or public safety, bundling them into central budgets. This is where you have to say, we do not want to be bundled under a whole grouping of minorities, or we do not want to be bundled under immigrants. We don't. If they are legal citizens, there's no reason to even call them an immigrant anymore, right? So why is that happening? And specifically, why it's happening in communities that you live in, Black women? Now, over time, immigrant serving infrastructures get embedded. Staff, programs, contractors become politically entrenched. Meanwhile, Black community programs shrink, go unfunded, or lie dormant. So you don't see stuff happening in your community when you're talking about crime getting crazy, you're complaining about it. And again, some people in our community just continue to support criminals. You know what I'm saying? But even regardless of that, they're using your community to erase you, don't fund you, continue to put you down, empowering people who ain't even from this country to even look down on you, which is hilarious to me, right? The quiet shift is who gets served first. Okay. So that's been the shift, black women, that you're not even getting served no more. They're forgetting about you. The people that supposedly are for you or say they're for you or have or look like you, brown like you, black like you, right? We know that funding isn't hitting your pockets or your community or your neighborhood. It's not hitting. And from the top down, your crime isn't cleaned up. Okay. Let's look at the impact on the black population decline or just displacement. Okay. The demographic shift is stark. In 1980, Black Californians made up about 7.7% of the state. Now they hover near 5 to 6%. In cities like Oakland, the Black share dropped nearly 46% from 2000 to 2020. And that's 20 years. 20 years. So what is going on? Again, millennials, we were still pretty young. Like I know I was definitely in junior high during that time. Or no, excuse me, going to high school, actually. I think I was a freshman in 2000. So they affected our parents and grandparents. They continue to slam down on them. But again, when we're coming from a community that doesn't take education seriously, who's politically illiterate, who's tied to emotion. That's why I'm like, you need to separate your belief system from reality. Because if someone comes to you talking about Jesus or prayer and all that shit, or using pastors who are just getting money to make you come to church and nothing comes out of it, you're not getting blessed. You don't see none of that shit happening. You've been praying and praying and praying, and you don't see none of that shit happening for you. Let's be for real. Be real with yourself, black people, black women. In Altadena, a majority black town in the 80s, the proportion has fallen to under 20%. Los Angeles County lost tens of thousands of black residents between 2000 and 2020. And I've seen it. Again, I am a native here, right? And some of us are natives. Even the Mexican Americans, we're natives to California or just this country as Americans, and we seen the pickup. Some of them will tell you, after the civil rights, how immigrants came in here, and we're talking about our older parents, our grandparents and them. They seen it, 1960s stuff, that the influx of immigrants coming in, and we'll get to some of those things. So you can see the playing field, seeing what's happening, seeing while being politically illiterate and emotional, being manipulated with your emotions has made you continue to vote, continue to back up policies that affect you economically. When you're talking about reparations and all this other stuff, if you don't understand how these things have taken place, just letting your counterparts talk about, oh, we were kings and black people own this, and you're talking about the same issues every year. Like, it's so much history, but you let people talk about the same stuff like Emmett Tills and Black Wall Street. You don't talk about, and there's some very few black people who talk about a lot of historic stuff in this country that is way beyond the surface layer that certain counterparts like to continue to talk about, right? You need to get down to the policy. You need to get down to what the actual government changes were that affected you, because it's easy to tell someone who's an immigrant or who's even just a supremacist that want to just talk shit to you all day and they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. It's easy to just, debate them and give them the facts. Like, it's easy because information is way available. But if their minds don't even think in this way and you are already ready with ammo, then you've already won that debate or that argument, right? To me, I don't go out, looking to be ignorant, right? I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I'd rather be informed so that I have the ammo to shut somebody down. That's the same way you got to approach your stuff. You can't be ready to fight somebody and just talking about I said what I said and all these other stupid rhetorics that you get from people, and you sound ignorant, black women. You do. You do. You're embarrassing. It's embarrassing to hear that stuff and you have no ammo. You have no ammo. You're emotionally wrecked and you allowed it to happen. So this is not benign migration. It's displacement, black women. Do you hear what I said? Displacement, erasure has been happening through people that you've been voting for. Because I don't know too many Republican cities or states that was like, yeah, we want to be sanctuary. Rising housing costs removed a lot of black people, black homeowners, okay? Speculator buyouts, redevelopment, zoning changes, and exclusionary investment push people out. Homelessness is crazy. Jobs. Y'all don't need, again, not saying all black people are working certain minimum wage jobs, but this is why you can't get a decent job. And you have people in our community that just wants to promote basic jobs like being a trucker. And there's nothing wrong with truckers. I'm just saying you don't even got to think much. It's like driving a fucking school bus, in my opinion. You got to be careful with the kids you're driving, or a city bus with the people you drive. You're carrying around sensitive. I don't even call it property because people are. I don't believe people are property, but you're carrying around sensitive, or even when you're talking about gas trucks or explosive. It's the same thing. And all you need to do is know how to drive and read signs, right? So you got people promoting that. They're not even promoting to go to school. Some people don't go to school to learn, they go to school to chase women. And black women, we accepted it. We dumbed ourselves down. Some of us dumbed ourselves down to align with people who didn't want to be disciplined enough or continue to fight for, who defeated themselves. Millennials, we don't got to be defeated. We still got a lot of life left in us. Again, we're barely mid 30s to probably early to maybe mid 40s right now. Still in a good prime area. As black families leave, their consumer dollars, political clout, and business footprints depart. Now, again, I really don't like the term to be labeled as a consumer. I am an entrepreneur outside of just being someone who is an engineer as well. So, I just want to say that I don't like even when black women ignorantly are boasting and bragging about being a consumer, because you do not understand what that even means. To say, oh, I just make money to go spend. I just make money to go and spend on this restaurant that we don't own, and that manufacturer and that person over there, like ready to support grocery stores and all that. It's not this great positive thing to say you have trillions of dollars in spending, and none of that trillion is truly going to cash flow investments, buying new businesses, buying more land. You guys want to check off the box because a few black people bought some land. Like, we're not dominating is the issue. And we can't dominate because of the voting, the policies. So people are boasting in our community about things that we still haven't politically addressed. The city that once had thriving black corridors loses them. Those losses become irreversible when city planning, transit, and infrastructure follow new demographic lines. LA, which, again, I think more the housing issue just needs to be handled. It doesn't need to be, oh, we need more housing and affordable housing when if you're going to build near these public transit lines or anything like that, and the housing, the rent costs can still go up in the next few years because you haven't addressed anything through a policy or an executive order or anything like that. You haven't did any legislation that talks about the housing issues that creates more homeless people. You're letting more people into this state, and I'm just speaking for California specifically. And things are getting more and more expensive. You haven't addressed that as the government. That's the issue you got to look at. So cool if you're going to bring housing, but you're not building houses and allowing Americans to benefit off the new houses. We have a lot of land here in California, y'all. California is huge as hell. We are a big fucking state compared to Texas. We are huge, okay? We take up a few states just looking on the map. So we have a lot of land out here, but they're moving people into certain cities that's causing an overflow of people. And they just want to build new houses or apartments per se in areas and complain about the people who say, hey, I don't want that shit around my house because I've been here for decades, but you just want to build up some new shit for what? So again, your voting, it matters. Your understanding of politics, of policies and initiatives and all that stuff matters. Do you have to be an expert at them? No, but you need to understand it enough to know what you're voting for. Okay. Now, let's go back to crime and community safety. Okay. Here's the reality. Even if crime doesn't dramatically spike, perceived safety erodes when policing feels inconsistent. And black people, we have been feeling that for years, have we not? Is it because we haven't been voting people incorrectly? Racism and stuff does occur, but internally, in black women, I like to let us look at the internal things that we're doing, saying, reacting, that needs to change. You have no political power because you allowed your counterparts to get out of hand. You allow them to just get away with crimes. You have. You truly have. Regardless of how you want to speak on it, say it like it's just the truth. You got our counterparts who believe that they're doing better and still have the same criminal mindset. Some of us, black women, y'all, same thing. You get a better paying job, move to a better area, and you still have the same mindset as the criminals that you just left. This all comes together, black women. Inconsistent policing have to be addressed through city councils, who you're putting in the sheriff's position, your DA, you know, we're going to get to this no cash bail bullshit because you thought it was helping out your man. But we don't give a shit or a damn about it helping out your man if he's a fucking criminal. It has to be zero tolerance, excuse me. In precincts with fewer patrolling officers or reduced street presence, shootings, drug markets, and quality of life infractions rise. The quality of life is so important. Keep that to yourselves. Understand what quality of life means, black women. Local gangs know which blocks are under watch and which are left untended. Okay? So when your businesses, your storefronts are being jacked up and robbed and vandalized and everything else under the book, You got to understand, is this something that your city has engineered to happen towards you? Because again, Black women, you're being affected by this more than anyone else. And to go out and act numb to this is the reason why we've lost local political power. Your businesses aren't getting served. You're not getting those SBA loans for your entrepreneur endeavors. None of this stuff is happening. You can't even hire people at a crazy rate. You can't even pay out 60, 70, 80, 90, $100,000 to different employees. You're not even scaling up. These are issues. Those gaps hurt Black women, young children, and elders first. You need to report and continue to report. We need more victim centers in every state, any city that we're in. We need those centers. We need better ways of protecting ourselves. We need to ensure when we get when your man puts his hands on you, that should be it. That's You're done. You're done. You don't have to put up with that stuff, but you choosing to put up with it paints a picture on all of us as if we all pull up with it, and we don't. We would never. We could never. You better than me. Victims find reporting harder. So now, on top of racist viewpoints, on top of your local municipalities, your governments, whether it's a mayor or your police chiefs or any of that, now you know they're not even trying to help you with certain situations. Some of you getting knocked up between that washer and dryer, and you're not even reporting. You're not even trying to go get help from the ambulance or any of that stuff. You ready to go off. When enforcement is selective, sympathy dries up. You made some of these issues about your man and their interactions with the cops more so than putting people who do not belong in your community away because of your issue with thinking crime should be the only thing we should focus on and no cash bail. It's a recipe for disaster, and it has been for a very long time now. Neighborhoods retract. People stop walking at dusk, stop placing trust in local policing, stop investing in local commerce. So you don't even get people coming to want to invest in you. They don't even want to come to your businesses unless it's Black. So you don't, you know what I'm saying? And then again, you're having immigrants getting this money. All the money and funding is going towards them using your identity, using your crime rates, using your low education rate, using all that to get funding and continue to erase you, to displace you. You have to be ready for tourists. Your attitude sometimes, Black women, I'll put other our attitudes about how we see economics is failing us. Your center on certain counterparts stopped your money. Why are you letting things stop your money? Like, come on. Let's be for real. Sanctuary does not guarantee safety. Just because you're in a sanctuary city or state does not mean you about to be safe just because they are making immigrants feel safe. Without strategic investment in policing and community partnerships, it can create pockets of abandonment. The question is which neighborhoods? Of course, it's yours. Of course, it's yours. Let's talk about entrepreneurship and SBA gaps. Black women are among the fastest growing entrepreneur blocks nationally. Yet, in sanctuary jurisdictions, they often face a triple bind: higher rejection rates, weaker access to contracts, and political invisibility. That means because of these sanctuary policies, they're still saying, screw you, black woman, even though, and this is what I'm saying, I don't even understand how Republicans or racists or other Americans don't see the issue here to not support you, not seeing the obvious initiatives against you and aren't doing more themselves. But you, black women, have to do more for yourself first. It is the truth. You not doing for self. You religious women out there, you Christian women, in your Bible, it tells you need to do for self. That's how you actually get rewarded. Faith without works, the parables about the tents, all these things, you can't just be praying for God to help certain people. You can't pray for some miracle or whatever to happen and you don't do the work. But we've shown, even with the ratchet side, even with all that other stuff they want to focus and hover on, our counterparts want to focus and hover on, even with that, we have black women that have been doing their jobs as Americans, has been continuing to try to move forward, continuing. Some of these people who are immigrants have businesses, and we'll get to that, have these things and still do not support you. And we have a government that is not enforcing anything, that is not auditing anything, but got the nerve to go and challenge any other political candidate to debate as if things are clean. And you don't say nothing about that shit. We are so quick to be wanting to be emotional about somebody telling somebody off or whatever, but we're numb to what is actually going on. We don't have to be afraid in our communities. We can keep our heads up. There's warrior goddesses, warrior queens in our community that we don't have to fucking feel afraid of no goddamn body. So this is affecting your money, black women. Understand how it's affecting your money. In these sanctuary cities or states or jurisdictions, they affect your money. When you're trying to get you a business open and you need the funding from your federal government or your state government or your local government, and they just wince past you, but use your identity to get the funding. SBA data show minority women entrepreneurs are more likely to be denied loans. Interest rates are higher. Collateral requirements are stricter, for you, and you have not addressed your governor about it. Meanwhile, immigrant microloan networks, nonprofit starter grants, and city-sponsored immigrant incubators thrive in sanctuary cities. Like, you got to be like, what the hell and why? Why are we empowering people that ain't even American, that didn't even come through the right way, that didn't wait their turn, that have been living hidden for 20, 30 years and have a thriving business? You haven't, I've seen other people question that stuff as they should, but I don't see a lot of y'all questioning that. You don't question it at all. Grocery stores from these people, but you ain't got one going. You ain't went out and had your counterparts been paying attention, doing the jobs that we wanted them to do, that they needed to do. They would have got you those resources, but they didn't. You still have a fighting chance to do that. These programs pick winners, frequently those with immigration status, language connectivity, or grant writing support. So they're getting all of this support, black women, and you've been here the entire time. We're not immigrants. Black women lack those embedded systems historically. So this is historically that has been going on. That's why we cannot stop the fight, especially millennial women, Gen Z women. We cannot stop that. But how we vote, how we understand policies, legislation, all that stuff matters. Over time, Immigrant businesses outpace many Black owned firms in neighborhoods that once powered Black commerce. Why are you not questioning that stuff? We talk about it, right? We get mad about it. We do all of that, but nobody is stepping up. Some are, some have been trying. Because I'll say, Black women, we have challenged a lot of things that were trying to negatively affect us, whether it's in media or whatever. It's true. We have had Black women coming out speaking up against that. But what happens? Screw external differences. Screw external people having an idea or thought about us. It's internally that we allow people to promote and push those things about us internally, and we are okay with that. Or we think that they ain't talking about me. Yes, they are. Get out of your head. Go talk to a therapist so you can understand your reality. Pulling capital away from community circulation. So there's the capital. There's the money that has been pivoting away from you and focused on other people who ain't even from here. Who ain't even from here. That's a problem. No cash bail and community harm. And I like to bring this up because it affects Black women the most. We have warrior women, we have uh, intelligent warrior women. We have women who are just continuing to do what they need to do, the right thing. But you have a lot of single moms, and that's possibly by design. But again, you're dealing with counterparts. You're dealing with counterparts that you don't want to live in reality about. You don't want to live in reality. No cash bail reforms aimed to reduce pretrial incarceration for poverty, but often lack guardrails. I remember this happened because a rapper by the name of Jay Z had a documentary out about one Black guy who got lost in the prison system and ended up, I believe, either committing suicide or, um, yeah, I think that's what happened. He committed suicide because he was going through a lot of violent stuff in prison, which, I agree. If he wasn't violent, he shouldn't have even been in that type of prison. That's why, I think Black women should be investing in prisons to have better infrastructure and to make sure violent criminals aren't confused with criminals who may have petty theft or shoplifting and things like that. Better reform, and there are some people who just cannot be reformed. I still believe in the death penalty. I don't think that should never be taken off the table. I don't believe in Christianity or religion like y'all. So it is what it is. But if you read your Bible, your gods would have did the same thing. Would have been turned some of these people into dust. Been turned them into dust. Flooded them out. Burnt them up. Would have been done that. In practice, they sometimes allow repeat offenders to be released without sufficient checks. So again, your judges that you're voting in aren't even pushed back, or they're being pressured to allow people to go back into your community. Does this excuse other communities that want to play like they don't have crimes going on, that people aren't being put back into their streets to harm their women and children and elders? No, but I like to focus on us, on what we are doing in our community. If we want to be the standard and be the Black excellence and all that other shit, this is how you go about it. In sanctuary jurisdictions where law enforcement is already constrained by non cooperation policies, courts may hesitate to impose stricter conditions. So we have to go away with this no cash bail attitude and find a different way to approach it for people who may be poor based on the violence of the crime, the impact on the victim. If this is a serial person who breaks into stuff, you need to be in a jail. And You shouldn't just be getting no cash bail because you are liable to continue to break into people's cars. Though it's not this violent crime, you still cause a lot of damage to the community. So you shouldn't even be out. Shouldn't even be letting people out roam about free because your thought process is that they're two races or they're going to be doing more damage on that criminal than the damage that they've already caused to the community, which is beyond insane to even be thinking like that. Hurting your numbers, hurting your money, but you okay with that? This system stresses Black women disproportionately. Survivors of domestic violence may see abusers back on the streets in hours. Neighborhoods see cycles of recidivism. Women who have to shield children in these unstable environments absorb the trauma and economic fallout. And I've already discussed about the stress and trauma, depression, PTSD, everything health wise that's also affecting you, and you're being numb to it. You're numb to it. This affects you. This does affect your brain and how it's working. Reform without accountability becomes a revolving door that amplifies danger for innocent residents. So they bring in new people and they say, well, we're going to continue to do no cash bail. And they try to make it seem that your community is the one that's committing so many of these crimes and so much of this stuff to not fund you, to not give you nothing, but continue to let it happen so they can move you out. That's literally what you can follow. I'm not saying that it is. Again, I'm laying out a picture, but this is what you can kind of get from this, right? Let's look at homelessness and the services strain in these sanctuary cities and states. Sanctuary cities often become focal entry points for migrants needing immediate shelter, food, healthcare, etc. I'm just going to say this was never really a thing back in the day. Seasonal migrants was really what it was. You coming in, you're going to help on the farms or certain services, just like we have businesses that hire during high seasons, like this October, when holidays are really picking up, you'll hire and maybe let some people go, or maybe you keep some people. But that's really what it was. But now, since 2014, these particular politicians, governments have made them the face of needing immediate shelter, food, and healthcare when they're not even going through asylum. They're not going through any of that shit to even need any of this stuff. Temp shelters, hotels, or repurposed facilities get allocated. I remember during COVID. Again, that's why I didn't pick a side because I seen both sides either lying or I seen the truth coming out of both sides, right? Whether you were a Republican or Democrat. But I will say that I knew when certain states or cities were moving those immigrants who were coming through because they followed what Biden administration said, where hey, we're not going to turn them away or stop them. We'll just let them come in. However, we're not going to let them come in through any opening on the border. So we're closing it down. They got to come through the ports of entry. And then when they come through, we're going to ask them which sanctuary city or state do they want to go to. And we're going to fly them out or we're going to send them on buses to those areas. And that's really what was happening. That what was happening. Then during the pandemic, you had homelessness, you had people that was losing their homes, you had a lot of stuff going on. And again, if you're coming out of 2008, the no real home recovery was happening. Banks just got bailed out, right? But when you're coming out of that era, and you're seeing that a lot of Black households either lost those assets or never got to recover through policies or anything affecting those Americans who got hurt by that, which is our parents, right, or our grandparents. They got hurt by that. They never really helped them out, right? So now they were closing down schools in certain areas. They did all this stuff. Funding started getting undercut. They pulled out a lot of programs or skill based courses that could have helped a lot of young students, even millennials, to have a skill outside of what their parents was teaching them or what their parents knew, or if they were in a foster care home, they still were able to learn something so they can move forward. But all of that stuff happened. So homelessness is increasing. Why? Because I feel you have less jobs available for American people. Like, these are the results. For every action, there's a reaction. This was a scientific thing that was brought up, right? But these places, these facilities were being allocated now. Now they found shelters. They had the money to do all that. Like, this should have ring the alarm for you. It rang the alarm for me because I do not try to get emotionally involved. I was like, what? They didn't even find these places for the homeless people during COVID at times. But they want to make room for people who just arrived here. And they got the money to do that. What's going on? What's good? Right? And there was communities, not just black communities, but there were communities complaining about that after the pandemic, complaining about that. Like, what the hell is going on? These are crucial programs, but when migrants arrive in waves, resources get stretched, and that's literally what happened. Because again, your federal government supplies certain grants that can be allocated for certain projects or initiatives, whether it's streets or schools or hospitals. All of that stuff is then supplied to um, that city or state or whatever for those residents who work, pay taxes, all that stuff. That's another. You can see it as another way of getting a tax return outside of you getting a check back from the federal or state government, depending on where you live, right? So it stretch that funding. Resident programs, veteran shelters, family shelters get deprioritized or waitlisted out of nowhere. Now you on a waiting list like you just arrived in this country trying to get a green card, y'all. That's literally what took place. Black women already represent a disproportionate share of female homelessness, nearly 40% in California. When resources pour into migrant housing, fewer beds remain for longtime residents. You've been here. There's no way that should have happened over you. And while migrant shelters receive media attention and political goodwill, citizen shelters often operate in silence. So again, the media has a hand in it by promoting or presenting, a story or whatever to manipulate the public now, tugging at your Christian hearts, your Muslim hearts, okay? Tugging at you to make you believe that God is going to reward you. You don't even know, you guys don't even understand the characteristics of your own God. That's why I don't let you just pray for me. That's why I don't just let y'all talk to me any type of way about what you believe. You keep that to yourself. Because look what your beliefs got you. Look what your beliefs got you. You didn't even help yourself. The story of the three tenants, or the tenant story in the Bible. You are the one who got some gold, or let's just say gold or whatever, and you buried it and you didn't do nothing with it. And so the nobleman, the master, didn't even reward you, didn't even care to throw no party for you or nothing. Because you didn't understand why you needed to go out and do more with what you were handed. So you're even going against the principles of y'all's own religion. The burden of displacement becomes a competition for survival. So now you're competing against people who ain't even from here, black women, for resources and services that are for you. And you're in these positions of homelessness, public health issues, or just health issues. There's black women who are mentally disturbed. A lot of it. Some of y'all are operating at high levels and you're mentally disturbed. And you're living in these cities or states. It's crazy. Now, Let's go to education, schools, and sanctuary resources. Let's see how that has affected you. In immigrant dense neighborhoods, school districts reallocate funds to ESL, which is English as a second language, translation, newcomer academies. The resources matter, but sometimes at the cost of remedial funding, counseling, arts, and trauma support in long struggling black schools. As black student populations decline, district boards shift priorities accordingly. And we know they goddamn decline because we got the counterparts who continue to promote and hate on you being educated. So we know our community has an issue, have a quarrel with education. So we cannot lie here. We cannot lie. And then they bring in more people to compound on your failing grade rates, to take over those African American name schools in your community, to take your funding, to continue to suppress you and fuck up your money flow, your cash flow, your streets getting better, your policing continue to get better, your job opportunities going out the window because of your lack of education, because people are promoting that you don't go to school, that you don't keep your head in them books. They reversed it to say keep your head on the boys and not in them books. They trying to tell you because your priorities wasn't family, and some of them are escaping to the conservative side as they're trying to hide under the skirts of conservatives, in my opinion. But we're the same ones telling you to focus on family and still being uneducated, still talking ignorant, still not making no sense. Still ain't bringing you what I'm bringing you to make you understand a little bit better. They just campaigned against you. They didn't even try to present no facts because they can't. They don't take it seriously as black women have taken it past the civil rights era. But our failure to be politically literate has gotten us in a situation where we are really being erased or displaced. Now you got to go play nice with people that ain't from this fucking country. As as black student populations decline, district boards shift priorities accordingly. At the same time, closures of schools in historically black neighborhoods often go unnoticed because you don't vote, because we just did not continue the fight, because they are noticed. Don't get me wrong, you're definitely noticed, but it's where they want to push you out. They want to displace. They want to make you continue to sound ignorant, move ignorant, be out here shoplifting, robbing, or whatever for survival, right? That's what they want. When those facilities reopen, sometimes they target immigrant communities or dual language programs instead. So now your schools have been uh, changed out to welcome in ESL learning people of all kind of different languages to make them priority, and now your educational value has went down. You need to be just as vocal as our white American counterparts. You need to be just as vocal. Ain't no racism about it, no xenophobia about it, ain't nothing about that. You need to be just like them. That's a great takeaway from our white American community. A great takeaway. And what they should have done is backed your ass up, and they did not, because they continue to fail being emotionally illiterate about racism. They can lie to themselves, but they can't lie to me. The ones who want to back you up would have continued to do that, but they did not. Some of them did. Again, they were sounding the alarm, but you wanted to call every one of them racist. I personally don't believe that. I know what a racist motherfucker sounds like, moves like, but it's not all of them. Ain't no way no white guy wants me to do better, hires me, supports me, got my back. Ain't no way that's happening, and I got to look at them as racist. Do they look at all black people as someone they would support? Hell no. Just the same way we should be looking like that, whether black, white, or whatever. What we do for no damn reason. The cultural curricula, African American history classes, and safe spaces that once nurtured black identity vanished. Those losses compound generational disconnect. So it's been affecting the school quality, the education quality, black women. Let's talk about the workforce. Sanctuary fidelity deepens existing labor trends. In agriculture, hospitality, food service industries that traditionally hire locally, immigration has already saturated the workforce. So now, if we have workers who aren't even authorized to be working by state and federal law, you have to be authorized. You cannot go to other countries and just think you about to start a business or work there. But the media and certain politicians want to promote and push that we should be allowing that. And they haven't even helped you out. They continue to divert funding and everything away from you. So why should you even give a damn what they going through? Your jobs, again, I understand that people were tripping about this black job thing, but you got to understand. You got to understand. Some of these jobs are for teenagers, and they were displaced. Now you got a bunch of teens out running around, ain't got no work, don't know what work ethic is. This is the reason why these things affect you, people. They do, black women. Sanctuary codifies that arrangement by reducing local enforcement or oversight. So again, governors or mayors are not even enforcing anything, meaning they're allowing a lot of illegal laborers to come in, get treated like slaves, because that's what's happening to some of them. I mean, I've heard and seen some people just get mistreated, right? They just get mistreated, man, but then want to talk about that they're hardworking. No, you're getting mistreated. You're getting used. That's really what's happening. And they made these people prideful about being slaves, modern slaves. But they don't want to pay you better minimum wages. They don't want to make sure loans and housing recovery is available for you. For local black workers, especially in semi skilled roles, the replacement by cheaper immigrant labor squeezes opportunity. Now, I know black women who, unfortunately, counterparts just make cause an issue with. Let other ignorant fools make them believe certain stuff about black women that black women were already saying, hey, immigrants have been replacing y'all for a while now. Y'all better stop talking about you want them fresh off the boat. You better stop talking about you about to go passport bro yourself. You better stop talking about other women are better because they've been replacing you and you've done nothing about that, right? This has been happening for decades now. So not only was the racist policies put in place by people of those eras before us that continue to affect us, now you got it to where they want to manipulate you emotionally to feel good about them replacing you now more than ever. At higher skill tiers, H-1B and other visa programs pull engineering, tech, AI roles away from domestic talent. America, we have the talent. I am in no doubt that we have a lot of smart people here that can pull off every engineering, tech, AI, whatever the hell it is. We have that here, and I'm not saying it's just for black people, right? I think white people, Asian Americans, Mexican Americans, I think we all are smart enough that they don't truly need to go to any country and tell them, ask them to do nothing. I remember when the Hindu Indians were coming up. because I was learning from them as well. I learned from a lot of different people. They were working hard to, just be good at tech. And then once they got good, people would come in, right, from their communities. They would come in through these visa programs. They would get up in positions that are management. Then they would work with executives or whatever to bring in their people who were over in India and create their call centers, right? They had people who are selling certification training, people who are now into helping to get people jobs, recruiting. So you see that now in the tech era, but you don't see a lot of black people doing it or as many white people doing it. But you don't see that as much because they've outsourced all that stuff. So again, when you're seeing a president who's saying, "Yo, even with H-1B visas, I'm going to put that $100,000 price tag on you and make these American companies pay because he believes, like I believe, the talent we have the skill and talent here." Are there more jobs on this side of tech and all the hell yeah? Bringing manufacturing jobs, all that stuff back here through import tariffs on imports, certain industries. You got to look at that not as, man, it's affecting me because I got to pay more. Because again, the media wants to promote it as, man, it's going to hurt us and money and blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling you, black women, these are opportunities to take on, to bring back American jobs, labor, industry. Now, where you attack it and you say, hey, if you're going to bring this here, I want to make sure you're going to enforce checks on hiring practices so companies aren't lying, talking about they're not hiring illegal immigrants when their whole company has one particular demographic of people working for them. If people weren't illegal, they wouldn't be hiding when ICE and them come in to come get them. They wouldn't be hiding. When they talk about taking your job, this is literally what they're talking about. If sanctuary jurisdictions aren't cultivating local training pathways for Black youth, they seed emerging sectors, meaning they also need to do checks on these training facilities, job site facilities. They have to make sure that training is prioritized, especially in your community, especially at your HBCUs, to walk right into these jobs because certain people are taking advantage of the affirmative action, because that's what it was, affirmative action. DEI, to me, it was a buzzword. But affirmative action been here for so long because of the black and white American issues that we had, because they didn't want to hire people because you were like, they made up all this stuff. So that's why those things were put in place. It wasn't just to put them there and say, oh, this black person, like, again, like that person who's saying that has to be the most, I don't even know why people be supporting people who just say stuff like that. And you call yourself superior or whatever you want to call yourself. Like, why would you even support somebody who makes up stuff when you got to go through the same damn training and exams? Like, let's be fucking. Why would you're saying that and backing somebody up like that is bringing the quality of our education as America down. You're bringing down the quality of education to even say stupid shit like that. Like, come on, right? And black youth is out of hand because again education has continued to dwindle and you have no training or jobs available for them, so now you have survival mode popping off. Over time, the jobs that renew middle class black wealth shift to immigrant networks or outsourced systems. So your black wealth, the wealth gap you see, now you see a community that is predominantly made up of immigrants of first, second, and third generation aligning with your wealth gap and starting to rise above you because of your voting, black women, because of how you look at politics, how you are being emotionally involved into something, how they allow people to compare, immigration to being forcefully or oppressed through policy here in America. Like, you got to be like, yo, I understand, I have empathy for you, but we're not the same. We're not the same. And I'm just here to help articulate that better for you because our counterparts just don't do a good job at it. Now, I spoke about the tariff opportunity before, I think in a previous presentation, but let's just talk about it again when we're relating to sanctuary cities. Now, tariffs are meant to fuel domestic industry. But if sanctuary jurisdictions lag in preparing citizens, especially Black women, for procurement, supply chain, manufacturing, and distribution roles, the incoming opportunities land elsewhere. Again, if you're voting or supporting sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, who've already shown you they are willing to displace you and pivot the funding or all these programs towards people who just got here and not towards you, then these opportunities are going to go away from you right under your belt. And then you're not telling that same government to enforce checks and audits so that people aren't hiring and flipping whole industries like construction around where you don't even see hardly any real Americans who are, and they're probably in management positions, but you don't even see that because you want to make people feel empowered about quote unquote working hard. And that's not even the case. The new factories don't find Black vendors. They find existing contractors with continuity in city networks. This isn't theoretical. In states with reshoring initiatives, firms prioritize bidder relationships. If city procurement systems remain biased toward immigrant oriented actors, Black entrepreneurs remain locked out. So, this is why you want your federal government to say, yo, we're pulling funding because we don't believe that it's supporting Americans in general, right? Americans in general, but we don't believe the funding is supporting the communities that we're sending you this funding for, and we think it's going to people that just got here, which makes no sense. Which is why we see the homelessness out of control. Which is why we see the job loss and unemployment. This is why some Black firms aren't able to scale up, why some aren't even able to get started. They have to pull out of their own pockets. Why you keep oppressing them with crime. So what was going on with the money? The policy alignment between trade, manufacturing, and immigration must be bridged deliberately, Black women. Otherwise, sanctuary becomes double jeopardy, welcoming immigrants while excluding citizens from the growth wave. And again, some people will, again, the media is promoting that imports on tariffs, if you don't understand what they are, because I spoke about them in previous presentations, if you don't understand what's happening and what type of tariffs are being, I guess, impended upon, like China, China has been contributing a lot to the I would say the commerce, here as far as buying, selling, or whatnot. They've contributed a lot. So, that's why you see the administration going about tariffs the way they are to directly really affect China, but other countries, because, again, the goal is to make things America first. So, when you see stuff like that, you got to understand why this is happening, why reshoring is actually the underlying thing that's taking place and not just, oh, I'm looking to bring issues to Americans economically just for the fuck's sake of it, right? You got to read between the lines because again, both sides they will lie or omit facts. So let's focus back on California as a case study. In Altadena, a majority Black enclave in 1980s, the Black share has dropped below 20% amidst escalating home prices. So again, especially after 2008, we know home prices are crazy because rent prices are fucking crazy, right? Speculator buyouts and new zoning. Families who once lived generationally in that area are displaced to farther suburbs or out of county completely. So some Black people just have left California And it's not a part of that wave of Republicans who said, "Hey, we're going to leave California because of the policies and stuff," right? And even again, that wasn't even a big hit to California. Let's just be real. It wasn't even a big. It didn't even strike a big blow to California. We have 40 million people here, right? But when we're talking about the Black community here who are being displaced, who love California, who are native to California for decades upon decades upon decades, we're saying that that community has been displaced, uh, or engineered to be displaced. And we can see that through the policies, the actions, the legislative actions that's been taking place in California, or just sanctuary cities or states alone. Okay. So, meanwhile, new apartment complexes, often targeting immigrant populations, rise. In Los Angeles, the black population dropped from over 400,000 in 2000 to 360,000 in 2020. Now, that's just 40,000 people, you can say, as far as the Black American population. That drop erased decades of local business base, cultural institutions, and political weight. School district lines shift, zoning tilts toward high density towers, and transit routes favor areas of incoming growth, not outgoing residents. Altadena and LA offer a microcosm of sanctuaries and inequity trajectory. Okay. So again, we're just focusing on just California alone here as a case study. But again, this is for all sanctuary cities and states who have directed their funding mostly to protect, to fund people who aren't even who don't even have a legal status here in the country. Okay, over its Black population and other communities as well, but predominantly over its Black population. Okay, now let's look a little bit more about the economic pushback, okay, and see why Black women, you're being pushed back economically. Now, a few decades ago, Black owned salons, bookstores, media outlets were foundational community anchors. Now, many are shuttered, replaced by chain stores or immigrant businesses with city contracts. So, again, your local governments are in hand doing this, engineering this to affect your money. Okay, you can't even get city contracts, Black women. Let's look at this. Not saying that you can't get them, but they're not going to you as much. Is it that we're not going for the city contracts? Don't we have certain business, like, you have to look at that too. But as you see, they're not even going for you to allow you to progress more. The local circulation of dollars declines and wealth drains. Okay, so this is also contributing to the wealth gap that we are experiencing as well in this country. Contracts for cleaning, landscaping, food service, shuttle operations once tied to Black corridors now go to micro firms or nonprofit immigrant enterprises. The result, the visible Black presence in commerce fades. Shopping centers, corner stores, barbershops are all lost. The neighborhood is no longer anchored by Black economic identity. The silent slide marks the deeper cost of sanctuary underinvestment. So, with states and cities that are sanctuary focused, they no longer focus on those communities. And again, your community gets hit the hardest because they're saying we're gonna triple, dipple dog, double down, double down on you, and make sure that you're locked out of everything. But use your identity in order to get the funding, in order to support people who just got here. Okay. Now let's go to political power, because that's important. Again, we have to be politically literate Black women, okay? Now, Black communities are now shrinking in numbers and in clout. Fewer residents mean fewer council seats, school board influence, or votes per capita dollar. As district maps get redrawn, Black neighborhoods lose seat parity or representation in critical committees. Okay, so your decline, Black women, in political literacy, in getting into politics in some way, taking your vote serious enough, meaning again this 92% that just said, hey, we're going to vote for a Democratic president. Those numbers should have shown up locally as well. Those same numbers have to show up in your local government. It can't just be every 4 years and you boasting about it. And it seems that even with that 92%, you made and more of an emotional effort to support someone. Not saying that, the Democrats could have probably presented someone better, because I think the Republicans could have presented somebody better as well. So I'm not even going to say which side has the better candidate, because I haven't seen that for a while now. Just being honest, but you can't look at it as every 4 years this is how I'm making a mark. Where you even got some Black people in general, because I'm not going to say it's just Black women, but are going out and saying, "Hey, we." Did our activists stance for immigrants, okay, by voting for you. But as I'm showing you here, as I'm laying it out here, that may have been still the wrong move, right? It still was the wrong move. And why we have the current administration in place right now, okay? When representation declines, so does influence. So now your influence is, again, people will use manipulate you emotionally to make you feel bad for them and all this other stuff. And you really don't have to feel bad for them. You don't have to, because you have to look at your situation as an American here, first off, right? Budgetary lines shift toward neighborhoods with growing immigrant populations. So your budgets, that funding, again, that's coming from the federal government, that goes to the state government, that goes to your local city or municipalities, that funding mostly coming from the government is never to fund anything that got to do with an immigrant. It's for legal immigrants and it's for legal citizens or just citizens here. So when your state, that's a sanctuary city or sanctuary state, is taking those funds and shifting them towards other neighborhoods and other quote unquote growing populations, you have to look at that. Why isn't the money not coming to us, right? Ministries, public safety, parks, transit all reflect new demographic majorities. Power follows population. Sanctuary, intentionally or not, accelerates the demographic turnover that sidelines Black political voices. So even the certain politicians or political voices, they can't be, as Black women, we cannot continue to support people who we deem celebrities, meaning entertainers, people who rap, people who sing, people who got podcasts that don't talk about nothing but just share clips and just talk about those clips. They're not really breaking it down like I am. You know what I'm saying? They're not politically involved. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not super politically involved as I should be, but I am enough to know kind of what's going on and how to, you know, structure information in a way to present what's going on, whether it's Republican or Democrat, right? But I'm focusing on how we as Black women operate in this country and how we need to do better. We are not servicing ourselves better. We are not looking at ourselves as valuable enough to be represented, to be positioned correctly. A lot of us worked hard to even get in the positions that we were in. I don't believe Black women were given anything for free or anything just for the fuck's sake of it. That's just not what I believe. I believe we all had to work hard. I don't care what nobody else is saying about that. But I think other people are saying, yo, they're putting immigrants, though, in those places where Black American women probably should be at. And when they do that, those type of immigrants, like African immigrants, for example, would probably fare on aligning more of their particular tribe or whatever to come in and take over or whatever. We even seen certain people who are not Americans or Black Americans in positions, even in film and stuff. And people complain about that. And this is why the president even said, hey, if you make movies in another country or whatever, I'm gonna put tariffs on that too, because the focus is to shift back to America productivity. The underlying thing here is to shift back to American productivity, and Black women, you have to see the opportunity to take advantage of it. Now, um, I think we just talked about, um, yeah, we talked about the political power loss. So now let's talk about funding uh, programs in sanctuary. So sanctuary machinery cost money, legal defense, medical coverage for undocumented, translation, social service expansion, all demand staff, infrastructure, monitoring. These are legitimate needs, but because they flow through city systems that also service citizens, resource allocation becomes a zero sum. So again, the government, the federal government sends money, but they don't send it to be specifically for sanctuary cities to help with immigrants. They send it because they're like, this is the taxpayers or whatever, and this is what that money is going to go to. Even when we talk about immigrants paying taxes or whatever, when I look at that, at the end of the day, IRS doesn't give a damn. If you can look at it as, I came to a country and I'm just giving the IRS money just for the fuck's sake of it, because I have no legal right to be working, right? So why would you come here, work, and just pay taxes and you're not even authorized to work? At most, someone coming here can start a business, right, through the right paperwork and whatever they need, and would get an I-10 at most, right? Or at minimum, and use that to pay taxes. But when you're legal, you get a social security number, or your green card, which solidifies you to now reason why you're paying taxes. Otherwise, you're seeing sanctuary cities and states take that I-10 information, or promoting all these taxes are being paid by the undocumented, blah blah blah. So is this why they need to allocate funds for communities and fully take them over and displace people that were there because they're paying taxes? You got to understand, why is this happening? Why does your tax dollars not matter? And why would someone come here and just pay money to the IRS? No American who understands how the IRS is wants to pay money. We all look for our money to come back, because money has been taken out of our paycheck throughout the year because we worked, right? Now, let's look at these legitimate needs. These are legitimate needs, right? So, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Let me go back to this. Sanctuary machinery costs money. So, legal defense, medical coverage for the undocumented, translation, social service expansion, all demand staff, infrastructure, and monitoring. So, meaning there has been pivoting happening to be for people who aren't even from here or who just arrived, right? These are legitimate needs, but because they flow through city systems that also service citizens, which again, your identity is being used to get this funding, so that it looks as if it's serving you, but it's actually not servicing you under the state or the city's sanctuary laws, right? So local governments often blend sanctuaries under broad departmental budgets, making transparency murkier. Okay. When immigrant programming is institutionalized, staffing is permanent, contracts grow, and inertia solidifies. Over time, the system leads toward immigrant service by default, and citizen interest must fight into it, not start from parity. So again, if it's engineered specifically towards your community, Black women, this is why you're not getting your funding. This is why job opportunities may be scarce, and you got jobs that may have brought in more immigrant labor, and they're telling you you're not qualified, or whatever they want to make up, or you're lazy, or whatever they want to try to psychologically damage you with. It's just not true. It's plain as day. You can literally be like, yo, you get help at every churn. Like you could not come here and do it by yourself because our laws, if enforced, would never allow you to just do things by yourself, right? So it's a difference when we talk about you being helped and handheld the entire time, and citizens don't even get that. We have to fight for what's already should be allocated towards us. Okay. So this is another way you can quickly throw out people's arguments on what they believe is happening, but this is the truth because we're Americans. We know the systems way more than someone who's just coming here, right? So let's talk about the citizen action and what we can do um, for this as Black women. You can't complain in the dark. You must force sunlight, meaning your social media that you're talking on, you're speaking on, can't just be you speaking about it. Believe in that, stand in it, like I am. I'm here presenting something because I believe this stuff. I'm an American. I've been an American since I was born here. My parents, my grandparents, my great grandparents, my family, when I researched, came from the East Coast, and we're talking about through the transatlantic slave trade, came from the East Coast down to the South, and now we're in California and been in California for a few generations. What I'm saying, beyond what we know of the current modern immigrant population, right? So myself and plenty of Black Americans have established here in California, or just in the U.S. in general, right? So some people are only speaking to social media just to give their positions, and now it becomes trends where people are just sharing it. But speak up on it, learn these things so you can continue to educate, just like I am, so we can have a better idea of how we're going to vote. Again, I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I just like to have information so I can make a better informed decision for myself, right? Because outside of people, what they say and this and that and how the media goes, I can look at specific policy and legislation and be like, no, this is the facts here. These are the facts here. This is what they're actually doing, right? And draw from that and let the media just say what they want to say. Now, we also want to use public records laws, to demand line item budgets for immigrant versus citizen programs. File FOIA, which is FOIA, request on city contracts. We can do that. Immigrant shelters and program expansion. So no matter the information that I'm presenting here that I researched, there's more research that we are privy to. You know, FOIA is how some of these channels that report on political actions. That's how they get some of this information. Some of the crime channels that get that show videos and stuff like that. That's how they get this information. So you can do that too, Black women. You have that ability, right? Tighten the narrative by presenting data in audit-ready format to media, city councils, and oversight boards. So with this information, and again, I'll put my presentation in the link in the chat. I mean, not the chat, excuse me, in the description. But these presentations are clearly ways to use and to say, no, this is what's been gathered thus far, and you go out and do your further research on what I'm presenting, right? Now, push for charter amendments or local ordinances requiring annual equity audits of immigration related spending, meaning we as Americans in general, but in our community, since they have been affected the most, need to require audits every quarter or every month if you need, to be like, yo, we don't want this spending. We don't want the federal government money that they send to this state or this city to be allocated for special programs for people who just got here. They can go back, and that's why the deportation is happening. They want them to go back so that they come in the right way. And whatever the lottery is, as far as if it's only America only wants to allow a million in, that's just what it's going to be, and you just have to deal with it, right? Insist on participatory budgeting in your district. So we got a lot of sisters who are very good at budgeting, but you can open your mind to a higher level when it comes to your local government, understanding budgets, line items, right? Elevate reform candidates dedicated to balancing welcome with accountability. So you're going to be welcoming committee. You need to make sure that none of these funds is about to just welcome people into new buildings or repurpose buildings, and you have not given anything to us. So that's the accountability. You can welcome people here who have went through the process, but outside of that, there's no way you should be allocating funds again coming from our federal government down, and that's meant for us. And you do not supply the funding we need for to prevent crime or businesses being able to get the funding that they need or whatever else it needs to be for. Right? They're totally using this welcome a policy like Chicago, for example, and they don't have accountability. Right? Civil engagement is not noise when it comes paired with data, legal authority, and pressure. So, other than just speaking about it, this is a way that you bring data up, you bring information up, you present it in a way that it's either undeniable, right, or it's a way to hold people accountable, and it puts pressure on people because you're like, yo, you believed I wasn't smart enough or whatever. But the truth is, it's not hard to puzzle things together for people who think for themselves, right? It's really not hard, you know. Now, here's a strategic playbook that Black women can use. Um, Certification is your entry point, and this is why you need to force your local governments, your state governments, even the federal government to ensure that they have the checks and balances in place. Meaning, if they need to have more jobs, that are for auditors, they need to supply more jobs so that we can ensure that from a labor perspective to a business perspective, these industries are getting checked so that they do not, overrun our communities with people who just got here, right? So when we're talking about tariffs again, I talked about that in different presentations, but an MBE, a WOSB, hub zones, these unlock procurement tiers for Black women, especially when we're talking about bringing manufacturing back, farmers, getting their land back. Because, and I have another presentation coming up for California who just did a SB 518, and that's specifically to talk about reparations for Black Californians here through the descendants of slavery. But I have an issue with that, and I'm going to do a presentation on that. But this is the way that you got to look at how some of the displacement and land was just given away, and then when you bring in modernized immigrants who want to believe something, but we know they've been handheld the entire time. This is why, me, I don't care what they're saying. Like, they can be mad all they want. Like, if you go to the back of the line where you belong, you wouldn't be up here upset at people who are Americans. It should be crazy for Americans to hear anybody who ain't even legalized here to even have an attitude about anything because they work the job like everybody else works a job, right? But certification alone doesn't win. You must pair it with capital pulling, contract visibility, and political alignment. So these three things: economics by your capital, contracts with the government, meaning we don't want contracts being supplied to businesses that has a bunch of immigrants, right? We want to make sure those contracts also allow Black businesses, high revenue businesses, to advance, because they're American businesses, and those businesses more than likely will hire Americans. Political alignment as well. Again, we have lost political power in our local governments, and we have to gain that back, Black women. Create co-ops of Black women vendors to bid jointly. Hire grant writers to anchor you in RFP pipelines. Okay? Get on oversight boards, budgeting committees, or neighborhood planning councils. Okay? And do it with some integrity. You don't have to be up there scheming and scamming. You ain't got to be up there talking about my people, my this and my that. You can be better than them, but you need to ensure that your people ain't about to get hurt. That's how you look at it. Your Black people ain't got to hurt. That's why you're in these particular positions, so that your people don't get hurt. by new people coming in and taking the money right from under you, and using your identity to do it. Okay. Demand sections of immigrant program dollars be set aside for citizen benefit. There shouldn't even be an immigrant program dollars. That should be something they raised themselves to do whatever. But again, when the federal government sends money, is not to support immigrants at all. So that means your state or your city, if it's sanctuary, is literally taking that money and allocating it for them. Okay. So that has to be a demand. That has to be like a strict demand. Like, no, do not find another way. But they should not be taking money that's meant for the local community to fight crime or whatever the hell we need that money for, right? Train your daughters in procurement and policy. So learn it yourself and train your daughters. Okay. I'm just going to be honest. We don't have to do prostitution. You ain't got to do hoeing. Some things may just be something you're into because of your sexuality or your sexual drive. I get it as a woman, right? I'm not into that stuff, but I understand as a woman, who doesn't black and white things about masculine versus feminine or um, roles and stuff like that. Like that's just a belief for certain people who, to me, aren't as literate, or again, they need to win something, in their life because they've just been losing, I guess, because they already told themselves they're losers. But you need to build narrative authority. Use storytelling and data in media. Okay. It doesn't need to be focused and centered around our counterparts. You need to stop doing that. If you can't think of black people as a whole and black women specifically, then do not focus your stories particularly on our counterparts. That is hurting you when you are mostly the leaders of your household. You are the breadwinners of your household. So it makes no sense when your counterparts, unfortunately, abandoned you. They neglected you, your children. It's unfortunate, but that's just the truth. It's nothing to lie about or cover up or try to cookie cutter it. It's just the truth. You have a handful that support you, but outside of that, like, you need to focus on you, and those people who support you are going to continue to back you up. I'm just going to keep it real, and people from other communities will do the same. Okay. Black women are not secondary stakeholders. We are foundational architects if we claim the role. Okay, we've been here, we've been doing our thing, ladies. Now, let's look at a timeline from 2008 to 2025. And again, I chose this particular time because, again, millennials, we were just either graduating college, or entering college, or have already just graduated college. Okay. And this is also a time where the crash that we were alive for was happening, because 9/11 had occurred years prior to 2008. So this is, you could say, 7 years later, we went into a recession and, crash. Banks got bailed out. A lot of homeowners did not get to recover, especially black homeowners. So, you're looking at an asset that we lost, right? Some of our parents lost, you can say, because a lot of us, again, we weren't ready to buy homes or any of that. And some of us still aren't ready, right? That's why I say when the government is looking to forget, send out loan forgiveness, they need to look at a specific era and not just make people believe that everybody deserves loans to be forgiven, especially when you have sanctuary cities or states that are also providing certain benefits to people who just got here for school. Meaning, are they also going to get loan for student loan forgiveness? I don't think that should happen. I think they need to focus on the people who was here, the Americans who were here, and again, the millennials who were hit because we had just finished college, just going into college, or were in college. And these are the times when tuition started to truly start creeping up. And a lot of us didn't have jobs yet because we were getting student loans or support from our parents. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I feel like a specific era of student loan forgiveness should happen, and it should not just be across the board for people who just went to college like 5 years ago, right? So 2008 hits, financial collapse, black home equity vaporizes. In 2014 to 15, deportation pressure triggers sanctuary expansions. So again, I recall, I was still young, but I recall certain states or cities did was trying to hamper down on immigration and illegal immigration, meaning there were businesses, restaurants, all that, who were hiring people who were undocumented. And I just remember, Republicans were already talking about that stuff during that time. So this is why details matter. And this is why I'm like, I don't just vote and say, oh, Democrats are doing so much better for us and blah, 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 and this side is racist. I look at it as, nah, man, look a little bit deeper, right? Because they were already trying to say, yo, these people are trying to come in, taking jobs, doing this and doing that. I remember South Park making a an episode about they took your jobs, coming out as well. But again, when you're coming out of that crisis and black homeowners aren't getting the recovery they need, but the banks, got their thing. And then you have, let's just say the Democrats come in and their focus is totally on immigrants to protect immigrants. Okay. That's what they did. They didn't want people deported. You had Obama saying, he's supposedly the deporter in chief, but he also became lenient on illegal immigrants. He also said, yo, if they haven't committed like crazy crimes or blah, 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 they don't, we're not, I don't want you guys to really pressure them. And then it went to, we don't want, we're going to make our policies against the federal government sending in ICE to ensure we don't work with them, our local law enforcement, and no one can work with them, right? We're going to make that a pressure for them not to work with them to take out these immigrants. However, when that happened, as you've seen, it affected black communities the most, where economically it affected you, socially, politically it affected you. So that was the true change that happened, regardless if you just want to see it as, no, I like that blah blah's here and we're friends with here. But how many of these people hired y'all? We don't see you being hired amongst these people the same way that you probably open doors for them, right? We don't see that, or the pressure upon white businesses alone to hire people. But we have entrepreneurs who come into this country, and we don't see that same stuff. And in these particular cities and states, they're just turning their head. They're not even watching it. They're being blind to it, right? So it affected you this entire time. And I just picked 2008 to show that we were going to college, we were going to school, especially black women. That's why we fared way better as far as entrepreneurship, education, and all that. And it continued with generations under us. But this was happening. However, the funding and things that we should have been supplied wasn't happening for us still, right? So that's another issue in itself, and why I'm presenting this. So 2017, California passes the SB 54. Trump revives tariffs. 2018 to 2020, massive immigrant influx. The pandemic happened. Okay. PPE loans and social service reallocation happened. Okay. 2023 to 2025, no cash bail happened. Urban disorder narratives, National Guard deployments, and that's what we're seeing, now more than ever in Trump's first year back in his second term. Each wave changes policy posture, funding focus, and demographic tilt. So policies are in alignment with funding Black women. Okay. This is why details matter. And you being politically literate, you being the American that you are, you need to pay attention to these things. Okay. You have some older people who influenced me, to pay attention to this stuff. Those people didn't get involved with voting and stuff just for us to be like, it doesn't matter, listening to counterparts. who don't take education serious, who didn't take any of that stuff serious, who's just grifting to whatever they can grift to, instead of coming to you and giving you information that would uh, say, hey, we need a political strategy, right? Or they're taking over our schools, we need to do something to do better, right? Together, if that was the cause and the case. But unfortunately it's not. So this is why I have to speak to Black women, in particular, because I feel like we are the ones that still will make the moves we need to make, right? So when you chart those events side by side, patterns emerge. Black community decline often lags behind policy surges. Crisis after crisis funnels opportunity, enforcement, and narrative space to immigrant populations, while Black neighborhoods are repositioned as relics of past equity debates. Okay? So you have to understand the timeline. That's why I like to have details. And again, my career, we're about behavior analysis, when something happened, very, very detailed stuff. So, and my brain does this stuff anyway. So this is why I also, sometimes I don't like it, but my mind, I can remember a lot of stuff since childhood, like it's vivid. It's a gift and a curse, but because of that, because there's people like me, we're pulling out information so you can understand it from a timeline basis on how we got to this point and how we can work to change what's happening, right? So let's look forward. I love to look forward into the future. And even if you're an investor, Black women, or you're into understanding how to be an investor, because I think more of us need to be thinking and moving like that. Let's just look, 2026 and beyond, right? 2026 and beyond, there still could be a line of Republican presidents and changes because Americans in general have seen, finally woken up more to what the Democrats uh, have been doing, and they dropped the ball. Their focus on things, and then just trying to sign things in a law as band aids. Like that's what I see. Like the governor here in California, I think he's just signing stuff as band aids, and helping communities that, again, immigrant communities, and it sucks. And that's why I think California gets attacked too. I don't. It's not that I don't think that we can continue to be a great economic state. It's just the focus shifted so much that it doesn't even look like this came from Americans. And then not only that, you got people here empowered to believe that them just working a job makes them deserving to just be here and hide for 20 and 30 years when they were told they needed to leave. And you got people fighting and lying for them. So it's just a bunch of stuff, but that's why I'm presenting this so Black women can get a clue and make better decisions moving forward. So 2026 to 2030, the incoming years will be battleground. So millennial women specifically, we have to look at this fight strategically and differently moving forward. We have to have allyship with other Americans, right? That means Americans who are also open to manufacturing or tech based jobs being American first, right? We can't be working with Americans who think it only should be for white people, or certain other communities. Like, those people, we all need to just be like, yo, you need to go to the back of the line with the ignorant people that's also over there. You know what I'm saying? We want to move forward and we want to continue to be dominant in the world, and we can't be dominant if we are allowing immigrants to overrun. And I think that's also the reason why, we want to get back to true dominance as Americans. And other American communities need to realize, citizens need to realize that the attack against the Black community through sanctuary cities and states um, is detrimental to the progress of America, as I've been displaying, right? Because as you know, sanctuary cities and policies aren't something that millennials voted in, and it's not something other people have voted in. And some of these areas, they did have possible Republicans serving in their areas. I didn't pull out that information. But and those Republicans didn't make those changes either. There's still Republicans that benefit off of certain undocumented immigrant labor, so they would have to comply as well, right? And you can't have them willing to give it up just because they don't like black people or whatever their issues are. You have to think about it. Are you American first or not? Like, it really should be that question at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? So if Republicans capture key governorships or mayors, sanctuary rollback pressure intensifies. Okay, so these are ways and opportunities that you have to get allies, which you have. You have plenty of American allies, black women, but you can't keep looking at them in a certain way, meaning you have to change yourself internally too. It's your projection as well that's going out. It's you already being defeated in your mindset, right? So you have to create allyships with these other American communities so that they also help you to understand why certain policies can and cannot be in place if we all are to benefit off of them, right? So these things can roll back, but you have to ensure that you're voting people. It could be a Democrat, it could be a Democrat who says, you know what, I agree. It has been affecting us. It could be a black woman who's a Democrat. She may not be as conservative, but she can be, hey, I believe this is true. This is the data. It's presented itself, and I want to help roll back those pressures and still focus on American first because that's what Democrats should be focused on, right? So if Democrats hold, though, expect deeper immigrant integration, meaning Democrats have continued to show us since 2008 at minimum, as far as my research, even before, but I'm just saying, when it really started to take place. But 2014 is when it really, started to do a little bit more. But when you see that, we all as Americans can see that the Democrats, unfortunately, do not focus on Americans. They talk about healthcare, right? But we've also seen California say, well, we're going to open up healthcare or Medi-Cal for undocumented people, meaning people can just, what does that mean? Define undocumented, right? And that's what you got to understand. They will omit things or whatever. Now you got to go read about a legislative policy or whatever to understand what they meant by that. Someone who just came over and now they need to go to a hospital, right? When we as Americans go to Mexico or whatever to get medical attention, or Colombia, again, we have to get our passports. We still have to abide by their laws. We're there to give them business, but we also want the best care because we say, hey, in America is expensive, and it became expensive, and there's an issue that needs to work out about that, right? And we are going to fight in our country to say we need to figure out this healthcare issue, but it's the same thing, but we don't go over there expecting for these crazy health benefits to be given to us. We still have to pay money for that stuff, right? But here in America, the Democrats seem to legislatively, policy wise, put funding towards these things for them specifically, which should be a no-no, right? Either, and this is not saying we don't care or any. Again, I'm not religious, so I don't really hold to that type of feeling in that way that other people may interpret it. Because even if I look at the Bible, plenty of times God talked about his particular people, had his particular people directed to, take land or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a little different when you really think about that, right? But either way, black communities cannot stay passive, meaning black women, now that we've been resting, right, in this administration, we have to see the opportunities and we have to go for them and we have to speak up and speak out. That means a black woman or a few black women in each city, regardless of its sanctuary or not, need to step up. You need to create allyship, right? We're not looking for you to be in survivor mode. Survivor mode means we don't need to scheme and scam, but you need to understand if other people are trying to, and having a good political strategy, you need to understand a win-win situation. That's why they call Donald Trump the deal maker. You need to understand how to make deals and not just, oh, I'm trying to get money. Quit accepting crumbs as well. Like, we've been in this country long enough, we've been disciplined enough that we do not deserve crumbs. We should be getting paid on the dollar like a white man who went through school or MBA or whatever, especially if you didn't did that. You have the mindset. When it comes to the mind, I don't really put a gender or a sex to it. That's how some people like to think, but there's really no difference. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I don't really try to get into all that, because some people's understanding of things can be remedial, or again, it sounds like they just stepped into junior high, you know. But can be expected if you look at Republicans versus Democrats and how they've been working these policies. Again, most Republican cities or states do not um, gear their funding towards immigrants. They look to bring production. They look to bring either manufacturing back. They look for jobs. They look for infrastructure to be better, clean cities, crime to be down. That's really what they look for. Why can't Black Americans look to do the same? Why are we so passive about that, right? Opportunity lies in the window between policy change and institutional inertia. If we are organized, credentialed, capitalized, and politically prepared, we can secure roles in the refashioned infrastructure, because that's the underlying thing happening. And what needs to happen is that Democrats cannot come at this stuff, because they're going to try to do it. They're going to try to change it as if, or do it while they're trying to attack and bring lawsuits, right? But they're going to try to change it and continue to funnel people who just got here into those positions. That's what's going to happen. But you, Black women, you can put a stop to that. You can help put a stop to that, right? Moving forward. But the clock is ticking. Once budgets and contract cycles reset, locked in pathways closed. So, this is why it's important to understand who you're voting for. Now, key metrics to watch. So here's a few things you can watch. Okay, so Black share of populations in the city and county, and we're talking about watch these sanctuary cities and states. That's who we want to focus on, and we need to again create allyships with people who also want the same thing. That's how we're gonna win this back and get back what we need, the funding, everything we need for ourselves, right? Black home ownership rates, right? There's no reason why Black people, Black Americans, aren't owning homes or benefiting from home ownership. There should be no reason why we can't. Why our real estate agents, like all that redlining, agents who want to tell you which communities you can and cannot live in, like that has to go out the window if we want to be American first. And we need to ensure that, it's going to benefit all of us if we ensure that Black home ownership gets better, right? Our populations get better. Black small business contract awards. Again, there should be no way immigrants are benefiting more off SBA loans or any grants or anything when Black women aren't even getting them, or told you're getting stricter guidelines. Like that needs to be checked. People need to be fired. They need to be let go because it's obvious. It's really obvious. You know what I'm saying? They can't just make up anything. It's really obvious. You can't say, oh, well, they don't get this because of this particular check mark on their credit or whatever, but you let someone just come in who doesn't even have any of those things established here for even over 10, 20, whatever years, and they're just getting anything, right? So again, taking from 2008 to today, you can't say that Black women who went to school, who tried to get into better jobs, you can't say that, well, people who just got here and started to go to school and we made ways for them to get the education through ESL programs or letting them get tuition cheaper or whatever. We're allowing that, and now they deserve to have these things over Black women. Like, and you've already shown and proven that you are a true American. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you got to get allies to truly support you in what you're doing. Citizen versus immigrant program funding per capita. You need to take a look at that. Again, our federal government is not sending money to these states or cities for them to be pivoting all that money towards immigrant programs because the federal government wants to ensure that undocumented or illegal immigrants are not overstaying their welcome, or people with visas that are expired are not overstaying their welcomes. And we see that no matter what the media wants to push right now, you cannot get caught up in the emotion of it and stick with the detailed facts about it. Know how America works. We've been working America. We've been here forever now. We know how it works, whether you want to say things are racist or not. Even the little details. Know how your policing works. You know, when they're trying to say detain American citizens, that's just it. They're detained. But how many Americans have been actually deported? Right? They have never really, truly said any Americans have been deported. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be clear on the language. Details matter. What they're saying matters. Um, and precinct level crime trends in historically black blocks. Understand, is this crime uptick or happening in my area because I'm not reporting? Is this happening because people just racist? Is this happening because they're trying to use our identity to send more funding so that it can be diverted towards immigrants? You know what I'm saying? Like, why would they allow no cash bail to happen across the board, right? When that's not how people work. There's just going to be evil, criminal. That's just a thing that exists in America for the longest time since the inception here. Okay, so you got to say to yourself, Black women, why is the crime in my community not being taken care of? Why aren't people spending time in fucking jail, in prison, right? Why are they being let out violent, or someone who continues to commit theft or you know, harm our businesses, break into our businesses, and all that stuff. Like, you're being numb to the fact that your businesses are being attacked and you already don't get the funding allocated towards you to grow your business or protect it. That shit has to come out of your pocket or you raising money. You know what I'm saying? And they're still not awarding you for that. They're looking at an immigrant who just got here and giving them all the bells and whistles and making them feel good about themselves while you're doing the American way and hustling and bustling, and you still ain't getting the funding. So I don't give them cookies or stuff like that, because I like to stick to the facts. Now, when those go negative, policy has betrayed the community. That's why I'm so glad to hear more Black people have been influenced by looking at policies and not just letting rhetoric go, right? Now, you're going to have Black people who are going to misinterpret and they're just going to soundbite somebody else. Again, there's not a lot of Black people are presenting what I'm presenting, so I'm already hearing stuff, which I think people have already looked at my stuff. But you're not going to find a lot of that stuff. People who really like to go into detail like me to paint a picture and not just talk out my neck, right? When they go positive, that's evidence of accountability. So your sanctuary cities and states, if they're not redirecting funds and it ain't a little, they need 100% funding that's supplied from our federal government or any other fucking agencies needs to go towards that community, like 100%. I'm sorry, like we don't, we got our immigration laws. Either we're going to force them or not, right? Depending on who's in position. But outside of that, there's nothing else to say. Some people are like, oh well, it's taking too long to become, a citizen here. Well, yeah, it should be strict like that. We don't want to be like other countries and let you stay for 2 and 3 years and give you citizenship. That's nothing's wrong with that, right? Um, but just expecting that you should just be under the radar or come here and work without authorization. Anyone working without authorization, legal authorization, is taking a job. You really have to look at it that way. Like, you need a work permit. You know what I'm saying? An underage child, a teenager who wants to work, depending on their age, they have to have a work permit because we are against child labor laws here in America, right? So if they do want to work, they have to have a work permit. It's just what we put in place because coming from a past, right, to fix that past, to make sure that past doesn't return here. That's the reason why certain legislative laws or things are in place, and Black people fought a lot for that stuff, right? So you can't let the people before us who have fought for us be in vain. Black women. You cannot allow that to go in vain. So publish your own dashboards, right? Who's running, who's the candidates from the state to the local level, from different city, get a dashboard going on all of that. What have they done? What policies that have they supported? From your law enforcement, are they allowing crime to take place because they are being ignorant or being have some underlying racism, or they don't, what I'm saying? Like all that stuff matters, and you can tell, right? Your DAs, all that stuff. Do we want drugs overrunning our cities? Why are they allowing certain drug rehab centers to just still allow people to do drugs? Why are we having zones or hot zones to allow people to do that in Democratic run cities? Again, if you're not seeing that in Republican cities or whatever, why or how would they not allow it, but in your community it's allowed? Right? And we know some people have been silenced and all that, but we can't continue like that. Now, millennial Black women specifically, again, because of our age range right now, we have the opportunity to start speaking up and doing our jobs when it comes to our American politics. Okay? So make these metrics standard in mayoral debates, budget hearings, and civic watchdog forums. So when people start running now, I don't give a damn what party they're running for. You need to make sure that these are things that you're checking off the list. And if they do not meet these checklists, meaning it's not about them just saying it, if they have the ability to vote or be in committee meetings or whatever, showing by their actions would also tell you, you know, that they have done the best for you, right? Say, hey, we're going to put more auditors. We're going to hire more auditors, and we're going to get the training. We're going to get training centers for manufacturing jobs, or making sure that Black people in this community are going to get advantage because it's their community, and we did try to overrun it. That's just what it's going to be. We're going to be checking for immigrant-based entrepreneurs and making sure they've hired people that are American. It doesn't have to just be Black, but I'm just saying you're American, you need to hire, right? And they don't have to be people from their community. You can't run those checks on white businesses and then let these sanctuary cities or states do away with checking other people's businesses, right? It has to be across the board. And that's just how I see it. Don't make them the face of every quote unquote racial issue, and you allow other people to come in here and just do what they want, pretty much, Black women, right? You've been fighting with other Americans for space and opportunity. You shouldn't have to be fighting with people who ain't even from here, okay? So let's look at the messaging and momentum. Your language must be rigorous, not reactive. You got to learn to stop reacting, meaning go seek some therapy. Get you $100, get you $1,000 at minimum. And because, depending on where you're at your state, at most therapists, I would say they charge $100 per session. So make it, per every week, get you $1,000 for your mental health. Okay. And make sure that those therapists are going to be unbiased and you can talk to them. Don't be looking for your friends. Don't be looking for your man. Go talk to them and let out the issues, even from your childhood. Again, 60% of Black girls have experienced, sexual violence, molestation, rape, and then 40% of Black women dealt with interpartner violence, rape, or stuff like that, PTSD, bipolar disorders. We have a lot of that stuff in our community, and it has never been resolved. We cannot rely on our parents or our grandparents to just tell us to be strong. Black women have been continue to be told to be strong, and then on the other side, people want to attack you for being mentally strong, even though we're not always mentally strong, right? So go get help, seek medical attention anytime someone puts their hands on you, whether it's your counterpart or whoever. You do need medical attention. because we're not taking health as seriously as we need to. Some of us are, but we really need to take it seriously so that our daughters, or just children after us, can take it seriously as well. Okay, so you have to be the example, Black women. Okay, so be rigorous and not reactive. Again, reactive meaning you're allowing the media, regardless of if it's Republicans or Democrats or independents, whoever it is, you're allowing the media to manipulate your emotions where they're making you feel like you got to go vote for people and you didn't even understand, the policy behind that or the legislative deal behind that. Okay, so you can't do that, right? It should be something you're just totally against. Like you want clear definition, clear facts, and you want to see that data that backs up those facts, not just someone saying anything. And that's how they've been getting away, and getting your vote, because you don't even let them tell you anything. You let them depress you so much and oppress you so much, you don't even care no more. Okay. Um, so you need to be rigorous with this action, but not reactive. Phrases like sanctuary without equity is displacement. Okay. So no way they should have a sanctuary city or state and you have no equity within anything that they're bringing to that, whether it's education, business wise, labor force, workforce, excuse me. You having no equity, you not being written in that immigration policy is a problem, right? Audit the welcome, what they mean by welcome, depending on which city or state and sanctuary state you're in, what they mean by welcome. You need to get some clear definition. Show me the math, not the story, right? And again, that's where that data comes in. You just don't want to hear about someone crossing over and they had it hard and they traveled thousands upon thousand miles to get here. Understand how asylum works. Like, why would they do that when they should have went to the next country that was open for them, right? So some of these things, like I said, the media will paint a picture if you're not paying attention, right? Repeat them across platforms, regardless of the platform you're on. Repeat it. Forward them in emails to city council members. Press them into Q&A sessions at town hall. So, we have some Black people that are active. We need to continue to be more and more active. Don't be out here protesting because some crime went down, right? We need to stop protesting because a crime went down. It makes the face of Black women look like we only care about crime. And so we get things like no cash bail instead of focusing on, hey, economically we've been hit, socially, politically, like it ain't just about crime, people. You got to be on it. And this information I'm presenting to you should give you at least a good starting point of how to research, what you're looking for, so that they can't just gaslight you, right? They have to debate you on facts and make sure it's on camera because everything's social now, right? So everything's social. You got news channels that are on YouTube, okay? So goals in the first year, and you can take this year starting. Now that you have Trump in office, see it as an opportunity. See this as an opportunity, okay? Procurement floors, equity hearings, transparency dashboards, public testimonies, okay? So this is how we're going to continue to speak out. You have Black women in different cities that are speaking up about these issues. So this is what you want to continue. Support them from city to city, state to state. Get some allies that are Americans, and legal citizens. You need them as allies. And nothing against immigrants, but I think Black women need to make sure their allies are with Americans. Okay. Then escalate ballot language, charter amendments, municipal audits. Okay, these things need to be checked. Where is this money going? Right? We need to amend some of these policies or legislative, laws. Ballot language. We don't want one group thinking one thing and the others aren't. We don't even want people who ain't even supposed to be voting because sanctuary cities or states allow for people who just got here to break laws that were in place to prevent people from getting over on our government, right? Momentum builds the demand, not difference. Demand the shift and don't wait to be asked. We cannot be asking anymore. We have to demand it. We have to take, okay? And we can only do that by being more politically illiterate and having allies that are other Americans and taking away from their communities the things that continue to make them strongholds, right? We don't want crime in those communities, in our communities, right? We don't want our Black women not benefiting off of their businesses, their brick and mortars, right? We don't want food to be just served out in the street and anywhere just because, right? We don't want people getting funding when they just got here and that funding is not even supposed to be going towards them, right? We don't want our resources stretched when it's not even something. And again, resources are stretched because that federal funding, those grants, when it comes, again, they do not send you that money. They do not send the money to the states or the local municipal cities for them to be allocating any of it towards illegal immigrants. They do not send money for that. So when they're doing that, that's your local government taking it upon themselves to do that. And again, some of them are possibly stealing or whatever. I didn't really get into that. I'm not into financial forensics, but I am into forensics, digital forensics, and just a crime forensics. Crime more so like just watching it, but digital forensics, I'm into that because of my career path. But you don't want money to be used based on your identity, using your identity to get this and never serve you and your community. Okay, that's the point of being an American at the end of the day. That's why we celebrate the 4th of July, because the freedom that we fought for, the policy changes, everything that we helped fight for, we cannot allow that to go in vain. And we're giving up that by listening to even a subset of our community, Black women, who aren't dedicated to the advancement, the true advancement of us as Americans. Okay. Now, in closing, here's the charge. Sanctuary policies were sold as moral choice. They played on your morality, Black women. They functioned as demographic reordering. Black America is not the backdrop, it's the measure. So if we aren't progressing as Americans, this is why you see the spillover happening in other states, and they're fighting to not allow that to come in their areas. But when you look at our community, you have Black women, even how we vote seems to be that we're fighting for people other than us. You're not getting any award. You're not going to heaven faster. Nothing's happened for you this entire time. I do not walk around believing I'm a victim. I don't walk around like that. I walk around like an American. Like I really have that mentality. I don't know how I can tell y'all, but I have that mentality. Like even better than those who are white Americans. Only thing I didn't do is probably go into the military or do certain other stuff, but I have that mentality. Okay. It's been bred up in me. I believe in that. I believe we are the best country. If we were going against any other country, I'm going to stand for us. But I still appreciate different cultures. I love learning different languages. I love eating different food. I love their attire. I love that stuff about us. I love that there's so many different people on this planet. That is just a beautiful thing. However, when we're talking about cultures or again nations, we are a nation that was built, under duress, oppressed, policy wise, discriminated against. But we have to demand changes and continue to demand them as millennial women, Gen Z women, moving forward. right? We have to do that so we're benefiting, and we can only do that aligning with other Americans. Okay, so if we don't insist that sanctuary includes accountability, we'll see generation after generation vanish in plain sight. That means what's been contributing to the disbursement, the erasure of the Black community and Black women, even it will happen politically if we do not see what is happening here. You don't want to vote for a Republican because you think everyone over there is racist, and I agree. If there are people like that who think like that, who move like that, they need to be put on the back burner because it's not about their personal belief, right? Because they ran into a Black person who stole from them or whatever the hell they believe they've done, or because they watch some media which manipulated their mind to believe every Black person is like that, right? That's their own fault. And the same with Black people who don't even have white friends, who never really interacted with white people outside of your job, right? Who maybe experience a discrimination on the job, who may have ran into police and you never were someone who done a crime in your life, to still have that thought process and say you're a Christian or any type of religious belief that you have is totally crazy. It's insane thinking. I personally don't align with it, right? I like the facts and I like this and I like to be the American that I know that I am, and I'm gonna stand in it and continue to promote why our country is great by just being an example. Okay. So Black women, you are the nexus of stability, family, business, civic memory. Stand to claim it. Demand audit. Demand contract. Demand seat and inclusion. This is not a moment. This is the moment, Black women. The people who built cities must ensure those cities still see them fully, economically, politically, forever. That's what it is. Thank you so much for joining this presentation. I will make sure to plug this presentation link in the description below. I will be back with another one. You guys have a great day and remember to like, share, and subscribe.